All right, so Amy Hammond is going to present today. My name is Kara Poli. I'm going to moderate the questions in the chat box. So I will put resources in there for you guys. And without further ado, I will let Amy get started. Looks like we've still got some people funneling in, but I think it'll be okay.
Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, Karen, I want to apologize that you cannot see us. For some reason, GoToMeeting is not letting us share our cameras or turn our cameras on. We tried to troubleshoot this prior to uh, admitting everybody in, but it did not work for us. So it is just us. Kara did put in the chat right now, and I will let you know if you need closed captioning, there is a caption button at the bottom of your GoToMeeting screen. If you click that, it'll turn on closed captioning for you. It's not one that like we turn it on and share. You can turn it on individually if you need it. It's right there at the bottom of your screen. Other than that, we are going to talk about the monitoring review questionnaire. We've already done this presentation once when we changed it from the entrance interview questionnaire to the monitoring review questionnaire. And we added a lot more information. It became a lot bigger, but it became more detailed and a little bit easier for us to trim down our notification letter and to get all of the things that we need in order to properly monitor your property, your development. However, just recently, the 21, 22, 23, and 24 qualified allocation plans introduced new requirements that we had to monitor for. And so we had to incorporate those into the monitoring review questionnaire. So today I want to talk about what your monitoring review questionnaire should look like, how to answer it properly, what you need to submit in the CMTS attachment system, and answer any of the questions that you might have about it. So first, to get started, the monitoring review questionnaire is located on the unit status report page. This is a stage environment of CMTS, so this is a real property, but everything I am doing in here will not reflect on their CMTS. It is our how we IT and us try to fix things or use it for trainings. So once you get to your unit status report page, because this is a training environment, there's only a few of these here, but usually this is a really long list and you would have to scroll down because some people don't always scroll down and they email and say, well, where is the monitoring review questionnaire? Because you'll have every single unit status report that you have ever been required to submit in this list. So you might have to scroll past that list and there you will find your monitoring review questionnaire. Then you're going to hit start, edit, or view before submission. And it is going to open up your monitoring review questionnaire. And the first thing it tells you is to please answer the following questions based on your response. If instructed below, please submit through the CMTS attachment system anything indicated to evidence compliance with this requirement. So I'm going to go through this in each of the bolded sections and then see if you have any questions. So the first thing we ask is your contact information in CMTS updated and correct? So you will have a drop-down mesh and you're either going to tell us yes or no. If the answer is no, the next thing it says is please go in and update that prior to your monitoring review. Then it says, if the department is conducting this review on site, has your on-site staff been made aware of the visit? And I know this sounds like a funny question, but there are several times we appear on site and the staff has no idea that we were even going to be there. So this is a yes or no. Hopefully it is yes, but if no, please notify your on-site staff of the upcoming review. Please also note that the date and time that we are going to arrive there are approximate. You guys know this. We tell you this all the time in almost every training that we talk about those on-site reviews. We are on taxpayer time, so sometimes we're running ahead of schedule and we're going to bump you up. Sometimes we're running a little late based on our review and you're going to get moved down. So just please remember that those notices are approximate. In CMTS, is the development name the same as it is in known in public, which means is the name in CMTS the same as the name on the sign? Because we're driving to your location, we put in your address and GPS. If it's not the same, because sometimes our developments are located in areas where there's several developments, and we would have to guess if it's not the same. If it is the same, great, say yes. If no, please go into CMTS and update your name to the name that is on your sign. Next, we need to make sure that your physical address that is in CMTS is the same as your physical address at the development, because again, that's how we're getting to you. We are using that address in CMTS, plugging it into our GPS and driving to your development. So if it is the same, great. But if it's not, please go into CMTS and update your physical address so that we are using the same thing. And it is important, I want to say here that if you say, so say you look in CMTS and the address is not the same, and you say, you go in and you're like, oh, I got to go in and update that. And then you say yes, you need to answer correctly. At the time that you're filling this out, this was no, it's not. But you did go in and correct it because I already have like my January, my addresses are already in my itinerary. I've already pulled my compliance profile that I use that have the addresses. So I am all set. If you tell me yes, that it is the same here when I'm looking at this monitoring review questionnaire, because you're answering this, I haven't even sent out notices for my January yet, but I've already got my addresses plugged in. I've already mapped out my locations. I've already planned my trip based on those addresses. So if you say yes, that's the address I'm going to use. I'm not going to know that you went in and updated it. So you need to say, oh, no, the address in CMTS was not correct, but I did go in and update it. So this is saying, no, it wasn't correct, but I did go in and update it. And now that's going to trigger me to go in, adjust my address on my itinerary, adjust my address on my compliance or print a new compliance profile so I'm going to the right location. Next, it says, does the development have a leasing office at the physical address? If it's no, then tell us where we need to go to look at those files, because we are going to your leasing office to look at the files. But if their files are not at the leasing office, where do we go to look at them? So if it's no, you're going to enter in your address where it is. This is a text box, so you should be able to do this. So I know where I'm going to look at those files. And that again is important because now I'm going to adjust my itinerary, adjust my addresses, because I thought I was going to your leasing address when I planned this, but now I'm going to a different address. If the department is conducting this review on site, because sometimes we do on site and sometimes we do electronic reviews where we ask you to submit files electronically. But if we are coming on site, will there be space for up to 3 monitors to review files? It doesn't mean that there will be 3 monitors, but that is our biggest trips. We'll have 3 monitors. On our smaller trips, we'll have 1 to 2. So we just want you to be prepared that there could be up to 3 people coming into your office. Is there space for us to set up our laptops, plug in our laptops to keep them charged, and get out of your way so you can continue to have normal business operations? So it is important that you answer that for us, because if the answer is no, and we do have 3 monitors planned to go on that trip, the lead monitor might reach out to you and see if there's maybe a better location for us to meet, maybe at our hotel lobby, maybe somewhere else where you can bring the files in, or maybe we send 2 other monitors, we move another review up, send 2 monitors to go start that review, and one of us gets dropped off at your property. We will make arrangements, but we just need to know what our situation is. So Kara, I'm going to stop right there for just our first section, contact information. And is there any questions or anything that we need to talk about in this section?
We do not have any questions right now. I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of the address update. I was I did some reviews this week, and the property completed the questionnaire. They said the address was current. I called the property to find out, do you have a parking garage? Do you have a gate? That sort of a thing, because they were in an area where I've run into that before. And as it turns out, their address was wrong. So I was going to be on the wrong side of Austin. And had I not called, there could have potentially been some issues with that as far as delaying the review. So I know you guys kind of get, or I know that I get in kind of a mundane routine, like, oh, yep, 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 yep. And I just answer and I don't really think about what I'm answering. But this seems less important, but it is super important. Like Amy said, we've mapped out our trips, we've looked at it. If the address is off, and sometimes it's the difference between an east and a west, or a whole block or that sort of a thing, it really is helpful. And we do pay attention to whether or not that address is correct and, what we need to update. But that's all I
Yes.
have.
All right. Thanks, Kara. Next, we'll talk about the next section, which is reporting. And the first thing it tells you is, okay, stop right here. Make sure you have went in to CMTS. You have made sure your unit status report is up to date as of the date that you are doing this, or the date that the monitor indicated they wanted records through. So, for example, I'm going out on travel next week. I sent my notices out and I wanted an up to date unit status report as of November 31st. Now, if they submitted their unit status report on December 7th when their documents were due and it was up to date as December 7th, that's great. But we're not going to make you have to constantly go in and update and update. We just want them updated as of the end of the last month prior to the review. So make sure it's up to date, make sure all your special needs units are marked, make sure everything is ready to go on that unit status report, and then make sure it's submitted. Then you're going to come back to here and make sure that you continue to answer questions. So for the housing tax credit and exchange programs, have forms 8609 with any attachments as submitted to the IRS. Are they available? Do you have them? So if the answer is yes, then great. If the answer is no, then you're going to please make sure you submit them into the CMTS copies of your certificates of occupancy or temporary COs, because we need a place in service date. That's how we determine your income limits. So we need to know when you place in service, and that date is the certificate of occupancy or the temporary COs. Sometimes you haven't gotten your 8609s from the department yet. So that is what the NA is for, which means, so this is asking, do you have Form 8609, or I'm sorry, do you have Form 8609 if you are housing tax credit or exchange? Yes, then great, skip. You're done with this part. If it's no, I have not got them from the department yet, submit your certificates of occupancy or temporary COs. If you do not have housing tax credit or exchange, say you're just straight home, this is NA. You're not housing tax credit exchange. This does not apply to you. You can say NA, or you can just skip it all together and leave it blank. You'll be able to submit with blanks. So up to you, however you want to do it. We used to just have it blank. We got a lot of feedback in the last round that you guys like it NA because you like to see things filled out. So we put it in there. Either is acceptable. There is no non-compliance for not filling this out correctly. We're just trying to help you help us. So then it says, if you have gotten 8609s that you submitted to the IRS for each bin, have they already been uploaded in CMTS prior? So say you're a 2011 and yeah, your 8609s have been in CMTS forever and ever, then you're just going to say yes, and then you're done. But say you're a 2022 award and you just got your 8609s and they haven't been uploaded, then you're going to say no. And if it's no, we're going to say, okay, we don't need your certificate of occupancy. We need those 8609s. So please submit those with all the appropriate attachments. Again, if you're just a program that does not have 8609s, So if you are any other program besides Housing Tax Credit and Exchange, you can either leave this blank or you can put NA. Totally up to you. Then we need to know when the development was originally built. Put in your 4-year date. This is important because if you are the home program, there are those requirements for the lead-based paint addendums and stuff like that based on the year you were placed or you were built. So that is important for that program, and that is why we've asked for that there. Any questions about these reporting sections, Kara?
Not that I am seeing. I want to make sure everybody
Okay.
knows where the question box is at the bottom. Maybe it's at the top actually. You've got a
Mhm.
little like square conversation box and it has a question mark in it. That is what you would click to be able to submit your questions. So hopefully everybody has it and you're just doing a great job of explaining it. And that's why nobody's asking questions.
Great. Record keeping. That is what we're going to talk about next, record keeping. So, right, the next question says, we need to know how your files are stored. So, after COVID, we've had several management companies start to move or completely remove paper files from their portfolio and are doing strict electronic file retention. And that is okay. It is allowable, but this is a management or an ownership decision. So you might either have electronic only, you might have paper files, or you might have both, or some version of that. Maybe you have both a paper file and electronic file. Maybe you are in the process of converting to electronic, but you still have paper files. We need to know where you are with that. So if you are straight electronic, we are going to, again, shift our review, and we are going to not come out to your development, and we're going to change this to an electronic review where you will have to submit within a 24-hour notice files through our CMTS attachment system. Because what are we going to look at on your once we get on site? If you're all electronic, there's nothing for us, there's no paper for us to look at. So that's why. But if you are paper or both, we will be coming out there. And so the next question is, if it's paper or both, are the original files available for review once we get out there? So yes. If electronic, can you submit files within a 24-hour notice to the attachment system in CMTS? So some of these reviews, if you have moved your portfolio to all electronic, sometimes we have to look at 50 files. Sometimes we have to, can you upload 50 files electronically in 24 hours? If you cannot, then you're going to answer no here, and the monitor is going to reach out to you at this point and say, I see you said that you're all electronic. You would not answer this question. This would be blank because that's only for paper. It says that you are electronic, and it says you cannot complete this upload because you know in the past we've been there, we've looked at 50 some files. So you cannot do it in 24 hours. So we will reach out to you and say, how many files do you think you can upload in 24 hours? We're going to break it up. On this day, I'm going to send you a notice. You'll have 24 hours to upload 12, 20, whatever it is. And then the next day, I will upload the second half of it and you'll upload the second half. So we will work with you to make sure your upload gets in there. But we can only give you 24-hour notice because there is an IRS regulation that we cannot give advance notice and of the files we are reviewing. And we have talked to people at the IRS and they said that this is not considered advance notice. So we're good. So if you are electronic, we also have a new form on our website, and Kara will probably be able to put that attachment into the chat box or a link to this form. But if you are electronic, we are going to require that the owner certify that everything is electronic, and this must be completed by the owner. It cannot be completed by the management company. We've had situations where people have told us they're electronic and they're not. So we want the owner to certify to that. And please remember that if you are doing an owner certification and it says that right on the certification, and any of this information that you provided to the department is false, it will go to the enforcement committee for a review of possible debarment. That is a um, that is a high level of no-nos. So our legal division said, if we are going to do this, this is how we have to do it. So if you are going to answer, we are all electronic, and we switch our review from an on-site monitoring review to an electronic monitoring review, you need an owner to certify, yes, all of my documents are electronic. And they won't have to do this every time. This is kind of like your 8609s. Once you've done it once and it's uploaded into CMTS, you wouldn't have to do it again. So you would still answer like this, and we would already be able, the monitor would be able to pull that from the CMTS system. You wouldn't have to do it every single time, one time, just like your 8609. Does the LURA or application for funding for the development require marketing to veterans? So if you're required to do that per your land use restriction agreement, you are going to say yes. And then it tells you right here, here's another thing where you must submit to CMTS through the attachment system your evidence of marketing to those veterans, such as your flyers, letters, or any other way that you have completed marketing to those veterans organizations. The next one, this is one of those newer things in those newer LURAs and why we had to add it. So somewhere in 21, 22, 23, or 24, I can't remember what QAP, but some LURAs or in their application for funding, the development required marketing to public housing authorities wait list in a city and or county the development is located and any other PHA within 5 miles. So if your LURA requires this, you're going to say yes, and then you are going to submit through the attachment system a list of all the PHAs within your city, your county, and your 5 mile area, along with your evidence that you have completed marketing to them. So you're going to submit that to us because that is how we are going to monitor that. So that is, but if you have if your land use restriction agreement or your application does not say that you have this requirement, you're going to say no, and you have nothing that you need to attach to CMTS, and you're going to move on. Okay, questions about record keeping, Kara?
Now that we can find the questions box, I apologize for not explaining that earlier. We do have questions.
Okay, great.
We've had a couple people let me know that they appreciated that you going through that first section about CMTS and the address and everything, because they get in the rut of just clicking and saying yes, 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 making updates and not telling us. So we appreciate you guys, for paying attention and making those shifts. The next question is, how do we know how many files will need to be uploaded per property?
So if you don't know, so say you are electronic and you get to this question where it says, can files be uploaded in 24 hours? And you don't know, say this is your first review. You're going to know because your past reviews are going to, you're going to know. Last time they were here, they looked at 26 files. They're going to look at 26 files, um, and so on and so on. So, but if you don't know, you can call your monitor. I'm happy to tell you. I can look right now and tell you how many files I'm going to look at. I can't tell you which files, but I can tell you how many I'm going to review. And so you can call your monitor, or you can just answer no to this, and immediately your monitor is going to call you when they pull this.
That's very true. So the next question is, so only the owner can submit files electronically?
No, I'm sorry if I didn't explain that correctly. I think, Kara, when you might have to mute, I think there's an echo when I'm talking. I can hear it. I don't know if everybody else can. Um, so the owner has to submit the management company, the manager, however you guys do the submission is totally up to you into CMTS. But there is a certification that has to be completed by the owner. And Kara put a link of that certification in our chat. It's a form, it's a brand new form on our website where the owner is saying, yep, all of my files at this development are in electronic format only. There is not a piece of paper on this property. There's not a piece of paper at our corporate office. It is all in some electronic format. So that is what they're certifying to, because it changes how we review files. And we've had management companies tell us, yep, we're electronic. And then a monitor goes to a different property where or calls and says, oh, I hear you guys are electronic. And the manager says, no, I got paper files. So we need an owner to certify that, yes, all the documents, all my tenant files at this development are in electronic format. But anybody who has access to CMTS, however your management company wants that submission done, it doesn't matter to us as long as they get submitted. Hopefully that answers that question.
It does. And to follow up on that, if they are electronic and they don't have a monitoring review question or scheduled, could they go ahead and complete that form and upload it so that we would be aware of it when a
Yes.
future review is?
Yep. If you are in this situation right now, you can go pull that form today, have the owner fill it out for all of the, you have to have one for each of your developments and then you put it on, upload it to CMTS, and then then you would answer, however, yes or no. But when it says please complete, we'll see that in CMTS and we'll go in there and be able to be like, yep, here it is. They're electronic. We can change this from an on-site to an electronic.
Perfect. The next question. So this could be a requirement that is not in the LURA. It could only be on the application. I think she's talking about questions 11 through 15.
11 through 15 is what? Can you repeat that, Kara?
Yes, the question is, and I think this is with regards to the veterans and the PHA marketing.
Okay.
That it would not be in the LURA, it would only be in the application. Lisa, if I'm missing the mark there, let me know.
Oh, okay. This is a good place for me to explain why it says this. It'll be in both. But just yesterday, our board adopted the new compliance monitoring rules, which will be in a future office hours. We're going to go through some of the changes in that. But one of the things that we changed in there is sometimes we come out and do monitoring reviews and you don't have your recorded land use restriction agreement yet. So how we prepare for that monitoring review is we review the application and anything that owner promised in that application, because that is what is going to end up in that land use restriction agreement. So if the owner said, yep, in order to get points, I'm going to market to veterans. Yep, in order to get points, I'm going to market to these PHAs within 5 miles. We're monitoring not from Allura, but from the application. So we changed the language in the compliance monitoring rule to say, that we'll monitor services based on your LURA or application. So we wanted our monitoring review questionnaire to reflect the same thing. And we wanted you guys to be aware you might not have a LURA, and we didn't want you to say no or keep this blank because you didn't get your LURA yet, because we're going to monitor based on that application. And if that application says that you're required to market to veterans, we are monitoring to make sure you market to veterans. So it is important, if you do not have a land use restriction agreement in place at your development, you understand or have a copy of that application, because that's how we will monitor.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful. So with regards to question 13, the question is, if they have capabilities to upload them, but they also have paper files, should they mark yes because they can upload them, or should they mark no, or tell us that they have the capabilities, but that paper and digital are both available.
If this question is phrased like only for the electronic version, so if you're saying you have paper or if you say you have both, you would leave that blank and just say yes, that they will be available during the review, and then you would just leave that blank. Um, because that is just for that to trigger us for that electronic. And if you have the capability, I guess that you could say yes here. I think that might be helpful if, say, something happens and Kara can't go to your review and she's got to switch it and make it, because this has happened. I'm sure it's happened to you guys. I know it's happened where we have a monitoring review plan. Something happens either personally or with work scheduling for that monitor, and we have to flip that review to an electronic one, and we'll reach out to you and say, we're not going to be on site, we're changing this to an electronic review. Do you have the ability to do this upload? We'll work with you on how to do it. So you could, if you have the capability, say yes, and that would be helpful if we run into that situation. But just straight up, you can just leave it blank if you wanted to. I'm good with either one.
That gets us caught up on questions.
Right. Okay, we'll go here to ownership. This is a quick, just two questions. Has there been a change in ownership? Yes or no? This is usually no. But if yes, well, let's say if it's no, the next question is just going to be blank. I don't think there is an NA. You're just not going to answer it because it's just if yes. If there was a change in ownership, we just need to make sure that all was approved through the department, right? Because if that says yes and you leave this blank, we're going to reach out to asset management or scroll through CMTS attachment and see where's the approval from asset management for this ownership transfer. So this is more, a lot of these questions are to trigger you to fix it before we get out there. So if it was like, yeah, we had an ownership transfer, was it approved by the department? No. Okay, somebody better reach out to asset management and get that fixed because they're coming out to review. Any questions with that? It's really a simple one, but that.
No, no questions. And I know that seems silly, but I have shown up for monitoring reviews and they've said, oh, well, that was the other owner. And it's kind of like, wait, what? What do you mean the other owner? And so this does happen. Somebody said they lost you. I'm not sure. I was able to hear the whole time, so I will respond to them in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, let us know if you can't hear me or something's going on. The next section is special needs, continuum of care, local homeless, and veterans. There is a lot of this section that got expanded because continuum of care is in some of our land use restriction agreements. And now we also have veterans that is now showing up in our land use restriction agreements. So we need to know what we're monitoring. I mean, these are going to be in your land use restriction agreement or your application. So you see it says either one because we're monitoring from either one of them. So the first one is, does your land use restriction or application require you to have a certain number of units set aside for special needs housing? And remember, special needs housing is not your accessible units. Those are monitored by physical inspection. So your mobility and your visually impaired, those are monitored through physical inspections. This is your special needs households, the people living in your units, whether it is those accessible units or any other unit on your development. They don't have to be in the accessible units. They can be, but they don't have to be. That meets the definitions of special needs that is outlined in your land use restriction agreement. So if it's yes, that you have to have them, then you are going to make sure your unit status report is correctly identifying all of your special needs households. So you're going in and you're saying, unit 101, Hammond, it has a special needs household. I'm going to answer yes. Make sure it's there because we're going to check that and say, yep, these are the ones that they indicated are special needs. When we pull files, we'll pull some of those and make sure, yep, they have it marked correctly on the unit status report. It is a special needs household. They're meeting this requirement. That's how we check for that. In those land use restriction agreements, though, it will tell you if it's no. So say I'm supposed to have 6 special needs households, I only have 4. Those land use restriction agreements are going to say if you are supposed to have 6 and you only have 4, you're going to answer no to this. You're going to make sure those 4 are identified correctly on your unit status report. And then you are going to submit in the attachment system evidence of marketing to persons with disabilities. And you should be doing that through your affirmative marketing. I do not need your affirmative marketing plan. I do not need all of your affirmative marketing. That is monitored through our Fair Housing Division. But I need to make sure if you answer no here, that you have been doing marketing to persons with disabilities, which you should be doing anyways. And like I said, Fair Housing will monitor that. But since your land use restriction agreement says that this is how you don't get a finding for not having enough special needs household, is evidence that you have been marketing to them and they're just not moving into your development. So we would need to see that. And the only time you need to upload that is if this is no. If this is yes, we don't need you to upload your marketing to persons with disabilities, only if you are not meeting that set aside, because that is how we say, okay, well, they have 4 on their unit status report. I pulled these 2 units. They were both special needs, and they submitted documentation that they are marketing to persons with disabilities. They're in compliance. The other thing is, and you really need to read your land use restriction agreements carefully, because I almost missed this on a monitoring review. Because we're so used to seeing our special needs, and that's it. Underneath your special needs, in that same section of your land use restriction agreement, it will tell you that you are required to set aside a certain percentage of units for a continuum of care or local homeless service provider. So it will say, does your LURA or application require you to do this? If the answer is yes, then we need to see, because the LURA will require you to quarterly notify your continuum of care or local homeless providers your availability of units. So we're going to need to see that quarterly notifications, those letters you're sending out to your continuum of care or local homeless provider that I have these units available. So you're going to need to upload those. Also, we're going to need a list of the currently occupied, or because these land use restriction agreements say that you have to hold vacant units for a certain period of time for your COC or local homeless provider referrals. So this is a text box, so you can say, okay, I have unit 101 was referred over to me from a continuum of care or local homeless provider. Unit 105 is being held vacant for this. I have nobody in there. I'm holding that one vacant, and so on. And so say there was 5 of them. Unit 104, I've got somebody in there. Unit 206, I have somebody in there. And unit 307, I'm holding vacant right now. Now, why do we need to know this? Because we're going to have to look and make sure that that you have all the documentation and the referrals for you're going to also attach for those occupied ones those referrals, because that is a requirement. So we need to make sure that those referrals are in the file. For the vacant ones, you're just letting us know, hey, look on my unit status report, 105 is vacant. It is vacant because I'm holding it vacant to meet this requirement. But here's my referral for 101, 104, 206, and 307. Check my unit status report. It is vacant. So that is how you would fill that out if you have this requirement. And for each one that's occupied, you're going to upload those referrals so we can make sure you have those in the file. They have to have a referral from that continuum of care or local homeless service provider. The next question is, does the LURA or application for funding require that you provide a preference for leasing units to low-income veterans? This, again, is a newer requirement in some of those newer QAPs. And so if the answer is yes, then we know that we are going to see that probably a higher level of veterans on your application saying yes. We're gonna, if there a complaint comes in that says, this wait list isn't being handled right, we'll look at your written policies and procedures, make sure you have a preference. But this is just going to help us for monitoring purposes to know that, yeah, when we get out there, we're probably going to see a higher number of veterans on their applications. There's nothing else you need to submit for that. You just need to let us know if that is a requirement coming out there. So any questions about special needs, continuum of care, local homeless, or veterans?
Yes. The first question we have is, what if in year one, someone says yes to special needs, but in year two, they decide they want to say no or initial not to answer, even if there was no changes in the household? Should CMTS say yes or no for special needs?
So in CMTS, you can answer on your unit status report, even if they in the file decide they want to say NA, I'm not providing this information. You can say yes. Based on, visual, like if they're sitting in front of you and one of your special needs requirement is mobility and they are in a wheelchair, you can say, yes, this household is, whether the household wants to disclose that or not. Or if in the file, I'm looking at the file and the person is receiving Social Security disability, then okay, even if they answer no, because maybe they don't want to disclose that, that's okay. But in the file, they're receiving Social Security disability. They're not, then I know, and you marked yes, then that is, that meets those needs as long as it meets the needs outlined in your land use restrictions definitions of special needs. You can mark yes based on visual or other circumstances that you can ascertain, even if they fill out that special needs. And that is a lot. I get the question a lot of like, is the special needs TDHCA special needs form a required form? It's not a required form, but it is a good form to have when you have this requirement, because it gives the household the opportunity to answer yes or no to this, and it's in the file, or to say, I prefer not to answer this. And that's fine. There can be other indicators where you would say yes.
The next question is, and it may be something we need to email about, but the question is, for continuum of care, have you guys seen any of these referrals yet? And can we share where we're seeing them from?
I have done a monitoring review where they had one referral and it was in the file, and I think it was from a local homeless service provider, if I'm remembering correctly, and then they had to hold the rest vacant. They only had one.
Okay, looks like if the special needs form is checked yes, in CMTS, does disabled and special needs both need to say yes?
Well, it just depends on which one it falls. If it's yes for both, then yeah, yes for both is fine. Um, the only thing that will show up on the unit status report is the special needs, though.
I think that gets us caught up for special needs and continuum of care. Thanks,
All
Amy.
right. Now we're at tenant files. So this is just to help us understand what is going on with some of the leases, because there are some leasing requirements in your tenant files. So if you are operating a home, TCAP repayment funds, National Housing Trust Fund, or Home Art programs, and you were awarded funding after August 2023, are there any leases that are between an organization and a landlord instead of a tenant and a landlord? So, there's a lot of programs like, I think there's one life something, and they will come in and say, I've got tenants, I want to put them in here, and they want to be a part of that lease. So the answer is either yes or no. If you do not have this program, just leave it blank. If you have neighborhood stabilization, Are you using a master lease? Yes or no. If you don't have the NSP, leave it blank. If you have the housing tax credit program and units are leased to an organization for supportive housing program, have any units been vacant for more than 60 days and the development receiving rental payment? You're going to answer yes, no, or not applicable. Not applicable means I have the housing tax credit program, but I don't have any organization that I'm leasing to for a supportive housing program. If you answer yes, it's like, yes, I do have this. I do have I do have units that are leased to an organization of a supported housing program, and I do have vacant units for more than 60 days, and I have received rental payment on them. If the answer is no, it's I do have a housing tax credit program. I do have units that are leased to an organization of a supporting housing program. I do have units that have been vacant for more than 60 days, and I have not received rental payment on them. So that is how you would answer that for the housing tax credit program. If you do answer yes, that this is the situation, please list the unit numbers here that are leased to that organization for a supportive housing program that have been vacant for more than 60 days and you have received rental payments for them. So again, this is a text box. You can enter in any units, one unit, no units, however, but that's only if you answer yes there. Next is, has the current revision of the Tenants' Rights and Resource Guide with the property-specific information been completed and posted in the common area of the leasing office? This is yes or no. If it is no, this is not a trigger of noncompliance, because what that's telling you is you should get that posted before that monitor shows up, because if it's posted when we get there, we're not going to cite noncompliance. But this is just like, look around your office, make sure. And if it's yes, which most of them are, because a lot of you are ready to do that. But if this monitoring review is done electronic and it's not an on-site review, we're going to ask you to submit through the CMTS attachment system a copy of that posted guide, because we need to review it and make sure that it's the current version, it's been completed, and we're just saying, by you attaching the copy of it, we are trusting that you are attaching what has been posted. So any questions with tenant files?
I keep forgetting to unmute. I apologize. No, there are no questions with, oh, there's one that just came in. Does the Tenant Rights and Resources Guide need to be laminated?
No.
That's it for right now.
All right. Now, this has been our biggest change, and we love this change, and we hope you did too. So our original monitoring review questionnaire, the utility allowance section was intense. So we have tried to boil this down and make it less intense for everybody. So the questions are your tenants required to pay for any utilities? And if the answer is yes, tell us what they're required to pay. Okay, my tenants pay electric and gas. Okay, since the last monitoring review, have any of the utilities that are paid for by the tenant changed? If it's yes, then you say yes. You told us what they pay right now, so that means prior they were paying something different, or they weren't paying this. And I'm going to go into CMTS and look and make sure that you have an approval to change what your tenants pay from the department, because that is a requirement. And then the next question is, if it's nope, my tenants have always paid electric and gas, then it's no. This should not be blank. This is really always a yes or no question. Has this happened or has it not? Since the last monitoring review, has the utility allowance method changed? Again, you're saying either yes or you're saying no. Yes, it's changed. If that's a yes, the monitor is going to go into CMTS and make sure there's an approval there. That's what you're telling us there. If it's no, Nope, we're using the same method we did at the last monitoring review. Great. Then we're going to see, are there any units that are assisted with rural development, USDA, RD, 515, whatever you want to call it? If the answer is yes, then you're going to put in what units are assisted. So I have one in, or you can even, if it's all, you can say all units. You don't have to list the unit numbers. It's a text box, so you can say all units or all buildings, or, or you can list, I have 5 buildings, but I have assisted units in buildings 1 through 4. So, because this is going to tell us, okay, we have to use the RD utility allowance for buildings 1 through 4, and then building 5, they'll have a different utility allowance. But usually when it's RD assisted, it's usually all buildings. And so then it tells you, if yes, stop right here, go into the CMTS attachment system and update and upload your approved USDA. And once you do that, guess what? You don't do anything else in this utility allowance section. You skip all the way down to social services. You are done with utility allowances. All of these can stay as blank as whatever, because none of these questions apply to you anymore once you do that. If it's every building is assisted with RD, you're done. If you don't have RD, you're just going to say no, and you go on to the next question. The next question is, are there any units in the development assisted with HUD programs, such as project-based Section 8, public housing, RAD, any of those, but this does not include your vouchers. So any other HUD program but not vouchers. If the answer is yes, tell us what buildings are HUD assisted. Again, if it is all buildings, then you put in all buildings. You're going to stop right here. You're going to upload your 3 most current years of your approved HUD utility allowance. And that's how you're going to know you have a HUD program, because HUD's going to give you a utility allowance. And this is not the HUD model, and it's not your vouchers. So if HUD gives you a utility allowance, then this is your utility allowance. Or public housing, that is still HUD, but you get your utility allowance from somebody that is a HUD program. Then again, you're going to upload that. You're going to stop right here. You're skipping down to supportive services. You're done. If the answer is yes, but it's only buildings 1 through 4, and you got 5 buildings, you're going to upload that HUD, but then you got to keep going. This isn't a stop and skip to social services, because we got to know what utility allowance is building 5 using. So if the development has multiple HUD programs, please provide details, including what HUD programs are in each building, and submit all applicable building schedules. So we do run across HUD programs where it says, like, building 1 and 3 are project-based, and then buildings 2 and 4 are public housing, and then building 5 is housing tax credit. That's a perfect, that's telling us now you're going to upload. We know we should see a HUD project-based schedule. We should see a public housing schedule. And then we got to figure out what utility allowance are you using for housing tax credit. So you'd have to continue. Are any units in the development assisted with the home program that is not through TDHCA? So not a TDHCA one, but something. So Harris County, City of Austin, whoever's doing that. So if you say, yes, I do have that, then tell us what buildings. Again, if it's yes and all buildings, you're just going to stop, upload your 3 most current years of that approved utility allowance from that PJ that issued you that home funding. So if it's all buildings, that's what you're gonna do, and you're skipping to supportive services. You have nothing else to answer here. Again, if it's not all buildings, it's just building 1 through 4, then we need to know what is going on in building 5, so you'll have to keep going. The next question is, did the development elect to use the Public Housing Authority methodology? If the answer is yes, if yes, you need to submit 3 years worth of your utility schedules from that Public Housing Authority, and all building types and evidence of energy efficient if necessary, and submit those into CMTS. But then you also have to answer these questions down here. What building types are for the development? Apartments 2, 4, garden. So this is my building 1 and 3. And this is building 2 and 4. And then I've got some detached homes here in building 5. Whatever it is. And do any of these buildings use renewable energy? Yes. Okay, what type? I have solar on building 5. So we'll need to know that. If you use the PHA method, and only if you use the PHA method, you have to answer the questions 48 through 64. If you do not use the PHA method, you stop right here and go to social services, because we already have this information, because any other method besides RD, HUD, PJ or home PJ approval is approved through the department and already uploaded into CMTS. And we've already looked at utility allowance questionnaire, which is going to ask you these exact questions. You don't have to answer them again. This is only if you are using the PHA method, because we don't know this if you're using PHA. We need to know who pays for the heat of the unit. The tenant does. Is it gas or electric? Or wait, is it directly to the utility provider, directly to the owner, or through a third party? Directly to the utility provider. Is it gas or electric? It's electric. Is it heat pump or resistance? Resistance. Okay, cooking, who pays? Again, you guys know all of this, how to do this. It's the same as anything. Tenant pays directly to the provider. This one is gas. Who does water heating? Tenant pays for that directly to the provider. It is an individual heater, not a boil system, and it is gas. And then water, owner pays. Are the units sub-metered? This is only if the tenant pays, right? So we're going to skip. Sewer, owner pays. We don't have to know about actual consumption. The owner's paying that. Trash collection, owner pays. We don't have to know if it's this stuff. If it's owner, the next question is irrelevant. It's only if it's the tenant. If the tenant pays this, then we need to know, is it sub-metered and based on actual consumption? If it's yes, great. We know we're just going to use that from the PHA schedule. If it's no, then we need documentation of how you are doing your billing to these tenants. If it's on this RUB system, we need an explanation. We need backup documents all uploaded into CMTS. So 48 through 64 are only if you are elected to use the Public Housing Authority, because all these other systems, all the like HUD, RD, all of those, you're going to submit those to us and we're going to say they've already been approved by USDA. If it's HUD, you're going to submit that to us. This has already been approved by HUD. If it's a PJ from another home program that is not the department's, great. They've already reviewed and approved this. But if it is our funding and it is any of the other methodologies, we've already reviewed. You've already answered all of these questions in your utility allowance questionnaire packet when you submitted it for review. We already have all of these answers. It's already been reviewed by our UA team. It's already been uploaded in CMTS. You don't have to answer these questions again. Any questions about that, Kara?
Yes, we have
Okay.
several.
Okay.
So one person said that they really like the condensed utility allowance part of the questionnaire, and I heard that when I was at onsites this week. The next question goes back to the tenant resources guide, and the question is, do we still have to have the signature page in the file signed by the applicant or resident for the guide?
Yes, absolutely. That is non-compliance if it's not there.
The next question is 811 funds from TDHCA are still not considered to be HUD funded, right?
Correct. We have a waiver from HUD for that. So you will have a utility allowance for your 811 tenant, but it does not HUD regulate your building. So they may have a different utility allowance. It is approved by Bill Craner in the development or at the department. It is released on your rent schedule. So it may be different than it's kind of like your voucher. You're going to treat them like you would your voucher holder. So your unit status report, they may have a different UA. That's fine. We'll know it's 811 tenant. We'll know that that's a different one. If it's not the same, most of the time they're the same as ours. But if it's different, that's okay. Not a big deal. We understand that you're going to treat them just like a voucher.
Okay. The next question is, if the UA changed from PHA to the HUD model in the past 3 years, do you have to submit the PHA UA for those years before the HUD model took effect?
Yes, you will, because if we identify a rent issue, sometimes we have to go backwards and we have to figure out when did this rent issue trigger, right? So, and it is complicated. We have spreadsheets and all this stuff where we'll be like, okay, the rent limit was this at this time, a UA change came in here, a UA change came in here, a UA change came in here, a rent limit change came in here. And so we have to say that we have to put all of that in a model, and then we have to put in what your tenant was billed or paid in a model, and then we have to calculate like when did this actually trigger? Did it just happen last month? Did it happen 2 years ago? So yes, you would have to submit. We need three. You would just submit the 2 years of the PHA, and we would know that HUD model is your current one.
Okay. The next question is, if the property uses a third-party engineer for all households except the Section 8 voucher holders that use the PHA, do you still skip questions 48 through?
Yes. Yep. You skip 48 through 64. Yep. I do not need you to answer those just because you have a voucher holder. Nope.
I think that gets us caught up on utility allowance questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I hope you guys appreciate the condensed version. I know prepping, I appreciate the condensed version, but I know that people are very confused about this. Like, do I have to answer this? Do I not? So I hope this helped you figure out what you have to answer and what you don't have to answer. Okay, social services is our next section. And in this section, we ask the question, does your land use restriction or application for funding require you to provide social service? If the answer is yes, then you're going to answer questions 66 through 93. If the answer is no, you're going to skip these. And so let me be clear about when would it be a no? Doesn't every LURA require supportive services? Yes, every LURA does require supportive services unless there are some home only that do not require supportive services. There are some housing tax credit LURAs where you have completed your compliance period and your compliance period has not been extended and you are no longer required to provide supportive services. That would be another time that you could answer no here. Because even though it says, does your LURA or application require supportive service? If your LURA says that these services are through the compliance period and that period is over, this is no, your LURA is not requiring you to do this anymore. So there's some people who have straight home that don't have this. Some of the new home LURAs do have a supportive service requirement. So pay attention to that. All bond has a supportive service requirement. There's NSP that might not have a supportive service requirement. So this is either a yes or no based on those kind of things. So it's a yes or no question. There is an option for blank, but it shouldn't be blank. If you answer yes, you have to answer questions 66 through 93. If you answer no, you are going to skip all the way down to 94. And this is about supportive housing developments. So we'll get into that when we get down there, but if it's no, you skip all the way down to 94. But let's go back up to make this a yes. If this is a yes, is this the development's first monitoring review? And maybe not all services have been provided at this time, but there should be a plan. And that plan has to have specific dates. Like we plan to do an annual health fair in August of 2025. We plan to do, like here is our plan. This is what we're going to do. These are the services we're going to provide to meet these points. If yes, if this is a yes, this is our first review. We do not have all of our services in place yet. So we're required to have 9 points of services. We've only got 6 because we have a plan to do this one, and this one, but they're in future dates. Then you're going to submit all of the services you've been provided and your plan. So we will count those toward your points, but it has to have specific dates. You can't just say, we plan to do an annual health fair. When? When do you plan to do the annual health fair? And so we want to see the specific dates. Then it says, does the LURA or application for funding for this development require an on-site notary? So this can be confusing because sometimes notary is in the list of services as a point option, but that is not what this is asking. If you are counting it as a point option, you're going to add it down here at some point. This is asking, does it specific? Because there are LURAs that specifically say you are required to have a notary. If the answer is yes, then we want to see evidence that you have that notary. So the stamp, the certificate, and something that shows a calendar, something like that. Or like if you just have like a sign in your office that says notary available, the monitor will see that when they're on site and count that as evidence of letting the tenants know that you have this service, and then your stamp to kind of back up that you're in good standing and you really are a notary. Does the application for funding for the development require the community to make available on a regular basis to a local nonprofit or government provider of services a space to provide outreach services, education to tenants regarding the health and well-being? So if this is yes, then we need a proof of that submitted in the attachment system to CMTS. If it is no, then you just say no and move on to the next one. Does your land use restriction agreement or application of funding require a per unit cost for service that the owner must expend monthly? These are your bond LURAs that have this requirement in it. So if you have bond funding and you have this, yes, okay, then attach to CMTS all of the documents to evidence that you have met that cost, those costs per unit that you must expend monthly. So you need to submit that. If it's no, you can say no and move on. Now here you get to tell us, and this is the most important part of the services. You are now going to tell us what services that are from your LURA and what you are doing to provide them. So if I am doing annual health fair, I'm going to say that. and I'll just say every August we have several health providers come on a specific day to educate and provide screenings for our tenants. Okay, and then somewhere you're going to attach a flyer from August that has all of this great things that you're doing in your annual health fair and a sign-in sheet. And you're going to do every service that you do just like that. Twice monthly arts and crafts. Monthly themed crafts completed. Something like that. And then you're going to submit that. And so on and so on. And we've given space for, I think, at least 12 of them. Just fill out as many as you have. So if I have 6 points and I provide 5 services that get me 6 points, maybe I have notary here. Available during business hours. And I'm going to put that in there. So if this meets my point requirement, then I'm just going to skip on down to 94. But you're just going to keep doing this because when I'm prepping, what I do is I read this and I say, okay, I should on their attachment system see something for an annual health fair. It's there. Great. They get the point. I should see twice monthly arts and crafts. Great. They're going to get the point. I should see a notary. There it is. Great. They get the point. So you are going to do that. And then you are going for each service, you're going to submit through the attached sufficient documentation to evidence the required frequency and scope that is indicated in the LURA. Please include the current month, quarter, and year the services were provided. So if it is an annual health fair, I just need to know if I'm doing this review in December of 2025, I should see August 2024's flyer, sign-in sheet, and evidence that you had that annual fair. If it's twice monthly arts and craft, and I'm coming out in December, all I need to see is November's arts and crafts that you did in the month of November and October. October and November, we like to see 2 months worth. If it's notary, I just need to see the most, like the stamp and all that stuff. So I don't need 12 months of arts and crafts. 2 months is good. Showed me that you did in October, November, and that you've got October, November, maybe you even send me your December to show that it's planned. Great. That's even better. Give me that. That's plenty. I don't need any more than that to evidence that you are doing it. Because if you aren't, I promise you, your tenants will call. And then we might have to request in a complaint process 12 months worth to see that you are doing it. Does the LURA or application for funding for the development require operation as a supportive housing development? This is again something that is in the newer land use restriction agreements. If yes, then we want you to attach your required service plan. If you are required to operate as a supportive housing development, you have to have a service plan. And then also, if you are operating as a supportive house, if it's no, you're going to say no, and you are going to skip down to 98. And I probably should have added that as an instruction here because I think people get confused with this. But it is, this is a no, you're skipping down to 98 because the next few questions all have to do with a supported housing development. And maybe Kara, if you could write a note that my next revision, we need to add when they need to skip lines. and I will do that at our next revision. If it is a no, you are going to skip it down to 98. If it is a yes, though, you're going to answer these questions. Are there multiple systems in place for tenants to provide feedback to the development staff? It lists your methods. Okay, so we have a monthly resident town hall. We have a resident feedback portal or submission box. You know, what else could there be? We have coffee with the manager every Wednesday. Whatever it is for your tenants to provide feedback to your staff. Is there a tenant that is a member of the development owner or service provider's board of directors? That is a requirement for a supportive housing development. So you would say yes, and then provide the tenant's name and unit number. Does the development have a written eviction prevention policy that includes an appeal process? Again, this is only a requirement for the supportive housing development. So you'd say yes, and then you have to upload that to the attachment system. So that's only if it's yes. Remember, if this is no, you're going to skip all the way down to 98. Then it says, does the LURA or application for funding require operation of an after-school learning system? So this is not, there are some LURAs that require, like they're very old, like daycare and stuff like that. That is not this. This is a newer one. And this is in your land use restriction agreement, it'll say, I think it's headed as mitigation for schools, something like that. And it's where your developer got awarded funding in an area that did not have a school system that was operating at the highest level. So they didn't get a good rating, but we are doing a mitigation for school in your land use restriction agreement so that you can still build this development. So if you say yes, then you will provide evidence in CMTS of the 15 hours of service per week provided by the service coordinator or a third-party entity. So this is a requirement if you have that mitigation for schools in your land use restriction agreement. If you do not have this, you answer no, and there's nothing that you need to submit. Any questions about supportive services or social services included supportive housing and mitigation for schools?
There was a question about the eviction process, but they said they got it now, that it's tied to that.
Yep, it's tied to only if your land use restriction or application says you are a supportive housing development. That is it. If it does not say you are that, it'll have a list of all of this stuff that you have to provide if you are a supportive housing development. So you will know, there will be no question. It is a big section of your land use restriction agreement. So if this is a no, all of this is going to be nothing and blank all the way down to 98. And then you're going to say about that mitigation for schools. Are you yes or no on that? And again, your land use restriction agreement, it'll be right in there, just like your hub, just like your nonprofit, just like your supportive services, it'll be there. You will know. Next, we're going to talk about nonprofits, historically underutilized businesses or hubs, and community housing development organizations or CHODOs. Again, if your land use restriction or application for funding for the development requires ongoing material participation from the nonprofit, the hub, or the CHODO entity, please provide here, or you can upload to the attachment system a narrative. So we gave you the option to either type your narrative directly in to the monitoring review questionnaire, or you can upload it if it's a big long piece of paper and you have it on file and you don't want to type it in here. You don't have to. If you're going to upload it, just say, you can just say narrative has been uploaded. And then the monitor will know that you didn't just skip this. And then here it says, this is again something that we found in our newer LURAs. It says, does the LURA or application for funding for the development require that the nonprofit or the hub be involved in the development services or the provision of on-site resident services? So you might have to be involved in this. And if it's yes, then we need something uploaded in the attachment system that shows us that the services you listed up here in your supportive services are provided by that nonprofit or hub. And let me just backtrack and then I'll stop and see if there's any questions before we go to rent, fees, and units, which I think is our last section besides our one post 15 question, which is great because it puts us kind of right on track for time wise. But one thing that I wanted to point out about this supportive housing development that I didn't, in addition to this service, in that service plan that is required, it's going to say that you are required to provide services. We didn't want to create another section with 12 different services for you to list that you were providing. So we just want to see the plan because I'm guessing that most people are going to coordinate these that have this requirement are going to say, okay, I have to do 10 points of supportive services, plus I have to do, some of them have to be from this service plan. So I'm going to make sure they're the same. I'm not going to do 10 points of services plus an additional this service, right? So I'm going to marry these together. And so you can list that. So we want the plan, but that plan is going to list these services and they should tie to these. If they do not, for some reason, if you're offering a service in that plan that you did not list up here, you're going to want to submit that along with your plan. But we haven't really seen these yet, so this may change in the future. But once we start seeing these service plans, I am guessing if I was a manager or a management company or owner, I would make sure the services in my supportive housing development service plan match the services that I'm providing for my supportive services so that I'm knocking it out in one thing instead of two. All right, any questions about that or nonprofit hubs and CHODOs before we talk about rents, fees, and units?
No, ma'am, we're good to keep going.
Perfect. So here we're just asking you some questions about rent, fees, and units. So do the tenants pay for any amenities such as garages, carports, parking spots, storage units, your pool, your fitness center, your business center, hairdressing spaces, any of them? If it is yes, tell us what they pay for. Carports and storage. Okay. If it's no, you're going to say, nope, they don't pay for any of that stuff and leave it blank. Do the tenants pay for any required fees as a condition of occupancy? Like, do you have month-to-month rent? Do you have a laundry hookup fee? Do you have a fee for cable, a fee for internet? Do you require renter's insurance? If it's yes, tell us what it is. We have month-to-month and renter's insurance. And how much do you charge? Well, our month-to-month is $100 and our renter's insurance is based on tenant policy. Or if through us, $25. Okay. If the development is allocated with housing tax credit or exchange, do they charge an application fee? So if you don't have that funding, this stays blank. If you do, you're going to say yes, and then you're going to attach in CMTS evidence of your invoices from your screening company and any other documents to evidence the out-of-pocket cost. And then tell us right here what your breakdown is. Like, how did you come up with that application fee? Because I'm going to look at your invoice and I'm going to do my own math, but I want to see what is your application fee and how did you come up with it? Okay, my application fee is $20 and I'm invoiced $15 and we add the $5. You can add up to $5.50, but this person said we like a even $20. So this is how we did it. Oh wait, I put that in the wrong. Sorry, that goes in the next box. Can I cut it? Yep. That goes in that box. $20 per person. Wait, $20 for the first person in the household, and each additional is charged 15. Okay, and that's how, and this is what I'm invoiced $15 per person. And then we add $5. The department allows the additional $5.50 per household. Does the development charge this? Well, I do, but not the whole $5.50. So I'm going to say yes. Some people don't. Some people say no. If this question though, if this is a no, you do not charge an application fee. This is blank. This is blank. And this is blank. And you move on to 109. If you're a home program and home only and you don't have housing tax credit and exchange, that is blank. All of this is blank and you move down to your security deposit 109 because you don't have this program. So if this is only for a housing tax credit and exchange, if it's yes, then we're going to put the information in here. If it's nope, we don't charge one, these are all blank and we move down to 109. If I don't have housing tax credit and exchange, I'm all blank and I go down to 109, which is my next question. Does the development require a security deposit? Yes. If yes, are they fully refundable upon move out or transfer except for allowable deductions under law? Yes. If you don't require one, you can say no. If you, so that's a yes or no. This is only if yes, then you're going to leave it blank. If it's no. Are you in compliance? Are you current with your compliance and asset management oversight fees? So everybody has to pay fees to the development for compliance and asset management. It's part of your land use restriction agreement. And we check to make sure those fees have been paid prior to coming out to monitor. And if no, please contact the department's finance division to pay your required fees. If you don't know, you can leave this blank. We check this before we go, regardless of how you answer this question. It's just some of these questions are put in there to trigger you. Oh, they're going to monitor for this. Are any of your units being used for non-residential purposes? Do you have a unit you're using for a maintenance office or a shop? Do you have a unit that you're using for storage or a unit that you're using to provide social services? If the answer is yes, tell us what units and what they're being used for. 101 is storage right now, and 105 is my supportive services. Are any of your units occupied by employees, management, maintenance, or courtesy officers? If yes, then please upload for management, maintenance, employee units. Submit through CMTS evidence of full-time employment at the development. For the courtesy officer, just some kind of contract because they're not really full-time employed at your development. We understand that. So just some kind of contract that demonstrates, oh, right here. If yes, for courtesy officer, please list their responsibilities and submit their contract in CMTS. So for management and maintenance, we want their evidence of full-time employment at the development. And then for a courtesy officer, just list, if they patrol or if they're available nights. Nights at the development with some patrol. And then the post 15, we just want to know if you have units that are leased to full-time students. And you're allowed to do this to a certain percentage, but we just need to know what units those are. It kind of helps us in figuring out where your percentage is. It helps us in figuring out what we need to be looking at, all of that. Like if we need to pull a file, if I do pull unit 203, it should be a full-time student household, and that's okay because they're post 15. So it just kind of gives me some background on what I'm looking for in there. So Kara, do we have any questions about our last section, rents, fees, and utilities, and our post 15?
We do not have any questions.
All right. If you scroll down, it will tell you your actions needed. So based on your responses in this above thing, here is what you would need to submit to CMTS. Please make sure it's a unit status report and then all of this stuff based on the answers above. So it's going to tell you that. And then you hit save.
We did have a question.
Okay. And then it will be there. It goes to us. And once you hit submit, not just after you hit save, it'll go when you hit submit. All right. I will stop sharing, but.
We did have one question come in, Amy.
Okay.
And I think this is probably an easier explanation than what I'm thinking. They said that they've noticed that some questionnaires have more questions than others. Does that depend on the placed in service date? I think that's probably going to depend on which generation of questionnaire they've done. Is that right?
Yeah, this is going to be the same questionnaire for I'll go back here so I can finish this out a little bit. Everybody's going to have this questionnaire. If you're doing one of the older ones, yeah, it just depends. Like former ones are going to, before we made this change, the former one had a lot more questions, especially because that utility allowance section was so massive. This one has fewer, not by much, but does have fewer. And then the original one has way less, but it didn't give us nearly enough information. So once you hit save, you can go to preview before submitting, and it should bring up your unit stat or a PDF version of your report. And there it is with all the questions answered. So you can do this if you want. I'm going to preview, make sure I see everything, because this is exactly what we see when we open it up. This is how it looks when we look at it. So if you want to see, oh my goodness, what did I tell the monitor? You can go in here and look at that. And then you're just going to hit submit. And then it's going to ask you your property name and who did it, who prepared it. And then you're going to submit it and say, okay, and say, okay. And then it's done. It has been submitted. And then you can print it if you want to say, this is a version of what I have printed. Some management companies require that, some don't. That's up to you guys. But that is it for this. If we don't have any other questions, Sarah,
we did have another question come through.
Okay.
What documentation is required as proof of a full-time employee living on site?
I have seen several different things that I think are acceptable. I have seen a lease agreement with copies of their current pay stub. I have seen a lease rider that they have said, that the management company, I think TAA has a lease rider as far as I can see that, or maybe it wasn't a TAA, but a lease rider that says that they are an employee at this development, and should their employment terminate, then so would their housing, stuff like that. That's all acceptable.
And what if the employee that lives on site was also qualified as a household? They are not an exempt unit. They qualified to live there. Would they answer no to that, or would they still answer yes?
They would answer no to that because that would be um, not an exempt unit. We're only looking for your exempt units in that one.
Okay. Is there a questionnaire? If there is a questionnaire that has not been submitted for June, but submitted in August, do I still need to do the monitor review for June? I think we would need to look at that specifically for your
Yeah, I
property.
think I would have to look at that specifically. If you had a monitoring review questionnaire that was due in June and you didn't do it, you definitely got a finding from whoever came out to do your review. And the corrective action would be to complete the monitoring review questionnaire and submit it. So, but if you want to, you can email me or Kara directly, and we can go into the real CMTS because this is just a stage environment for training purposes, and we can take a look and see what's going on with that.
That is all the monitor review questionnaires that I am seeing. So we
Okay,
can shift gears. If you want to stop sharing, I will share mine
sure.
and we can shift into office hours. If you are
Okay.
leaving us this morning, you will be prompted to complete a survey about how this was all received, and if you have suggestions for future trainings. I appreciate any and all feedback on that, and I may email you if I have questions or follow-ups to it. But otherwise, thank you for joining us. We are now going to shift into our open forum office hours.